I remember when I was a wee small child, my family getting our very first computer. It was a Commodore 64 with, I believe, 64 entire bits of memory. It didn't have much of an operating system, just a blue screen that came up that you could type in. And all of the software that we could use was either on cartridges that plugged into the back of the machine, or eventually cassette tapes that you could put in the tape player that connected to the machine via a cord. And it was, early on, I think, just hooked up to an old black and white TV in its own room, the computer room. And that was it. And I was a kid, so pretty much all that I did with it was play games. Not good games. I mean, Pac-Man, I guess, and Omega Race, which was like a little space fighter, and some game that I don't remember the name of that was about brushing your teeth. I'm sure I was supposed to learn a lesson from that. But after a while, we started getting more. We got a disk drive with the big 5 1/4-inch floppies that you could put in, and it would take a minute to boot up. And more games were open, and word processors were there. You could type things out, and on the daisy wheel printer, it would print out, making that weird, annoying sound that old printers made, and new printers often still make, because we have not improved the printer in 30 years. After a while, that computer went into the computer room in the basement, and we got a new computer that went into the office upstairs. It was an Apple. And with that came, well, a bunch more games and a color screen and all sorts of things, but also, because my parents were professors at the university, a connection through our telephone line to this thing called the internet. Suddenly, I could access an entire world of information. There were no pictures yet. It was all still text, and I remember asking if I could get on the internet because it meant our phone wouldn't be available. But I remember asking if I could get on the internet and logging on and joining this web browser called Lynx, where I could just type in what I was looking for, and it would show me a whole world of text. I, again, used it mostly for games. There were these things called multi-user dungeons, these role-playing games right online where you could take your little gnome rogue through a world of danger and peril by saying things like, go north, light torch, fight orc. It was pretty basic. It was pretty simple. But after a while, my world grew there. I could email people. If I went to camp and I met some new friends, I could get their information and I could send them messages over the internet, over the phone line, and we could communicate not quite instantly, but faster than a letter. Not as personal as a phone call, but also not as awkward as a phone call when you're a teenager or when you're 48. It was a way of connecting with people all over. You could join bulletin boards and see what was happening. You could get news. It was amazing. It was this whole world where once I had to look information up in the horribly outdated World Book Encyclopedia, I could now find stuff that had been written as early as this morning to tell me what things were like. In many ways, I grew up with the internet. In a lot of ways, I came of age with the internet. So I remember creating a website on GeoCities. I remember blogging on WordPress. I remember having conversations with people, just people, on social media. And some of them didn't know anything, and some of them were experts in their fields. And we could talk. And I remember when Facebook was nothing more than posts created by your friends in reverse chronological order. And that was it. There's a good version of the internet. It existed. I know it existed. I was there. It was awesome. But at some point, and for reasons, things went downhill. And now I have this device in my pocket that has more power than the computers that took us to the moon, that keeps me connected to the world, and lets me look up information, and often makes me angry. That Facebook, that thing that used to be posts from friends in reverse chronological order, that thing that used to keep me connected with people who I knew in high school and college and seminary. When I opened it this morning, was AI-generated videos of cats and advertisements and suggestions to follow this or that, and a couple of posts that were designed to raise my blood pressure, to tick me off. Something that was once so great and so amazing has in so many ways fallen apart. And as one tech journalist I know puts it, I will never forgive them for what they did to the computer. We're almost to the end of this series of Future Ready Church, and we're in this chapter of this book where they talk about technology. Technology, we need to recognize, is a double-edged sword. Now, I need to be clear about what I'm talking about when I say technology, because for most of us, technology is just anything that was invented since we've been born. The way that the author Douglas Adams puts it is that things that existed when you were born, that's just the way the world is. Things that have been invented since the day that you were born until you turn 35 is technology that is new and amazing and exciting, and you can probably get a job with it. And anything you invent that was invented after you turned 35 is against nature and must be stopped. Technology is always a double-edged sword, and it has been since that first person grabbed a stick and a bit of natural fire and said, "Look what I found." If you go back far enough, you can find philosophers complaining about how much kids read these days. They're not talking to each other, they're just getting out scrolls. If you go back to the early 20th century, there's a great article in Science magazine complaining about this new fad amongst all of the kids. It's keeping them from having conversations. They're sitting at tables just staring at this thing. Why are they spending so much time on chess? Since time began, people have been complaining about technology, about the things that have made life better and the things that have made life worse, and they are often the same thing. And as I reread this chapter of A Future Ready Church, this chapter where they were talking about the possibilities of social media and cryptocurrency and AI, I was both warmed because technology can do amazing things, and horrified because I have been on Facebook recently. Technology is a double-edged sword. There is good and there is bad. And figuring out what is good and what is bad is often incredibly difficult. And most of us, most of the time, are spectators to it. Most of us, most of the time, hop on our computers, or more frequently our phones, or sometimes our watches. And we look at the world through a window. And that window is telling us what we should see. Facebook, again, is no longer the posts of friends in reverse chronological order. It has an algorithm. It is making decisions for us. It is saying, you really want to see this ad for a camera that you bought a month ago. You really want to see this AI-generated video of cats. You really want to see this post from whichever political party or pundit that is going to make you mad. And it serves it up. And it disconnects us. It makes us angry. It creates an image of the world that is not the world. I realize I'm being down on the internet. It is a useful thing. It is a good thing. I am glad that we have it. I grew up with it. I know it. And when we couldn't meet because of a global pandemic, we could still connect over YouTube and Zoom and all of that. And that was wonderful. And we can still connect today. We have our Facebook group and our Facebook page. We're on Blue Sky and Instagram. We can still talk to each other even if we can't be together. We can watch the video live right now on YouTube and Facebook and our website. We can connect with the video later. Later today, we'll have the entire worship service nicely edited. Just this sermon, nicely edited. Just the children's message, nicely edited for people to watch. And on Monday, we'll have snippets from this sermon that you can watch just a little piece of. On Tuesday, we'll have the takeaway. It just keeps going, this opportunity for connection, and yet that is hard to build. It is something that we have to build. We can't just be spectators to it. The internet is only good if we make it good. Our reading today is the foundation of our faith. It is this wild idea. It is this thing that I'm not sure even people at the time could quite grasp. It is this thing that I know people today have trouble grasping. It is the beginning of a story about a God who is love, who saw the world that once was beautiful, that once was a garden, that once had enough and more than enough and only a couple of people and a bunch of animals, that once was lush and green. It is the beginning of a story about a God who is love, seeing that world and seeing that it has fallen apart, that things are not what they once were, and chose not to be a spectator. How could God be a spectator? God is love. How can God look at this world that is falling apart and let it fall apart? Let it burn to ashes? No. This God who is love cannot stand on the sidelines. This God who is love has to take action. So this God who is love comes into the world as one of us in an era without the internet, and begins to change it. Does this work of redeeming and restoring the world, and even though it's hard to see at first, there are little shoots of a garden coming out of the ground. I know that you know this story, but do you know how amazing this story is? Do you know how astonishing this is? In a world where so many of us sit on the sidelines, God, who could have done nothing, who could have shut the whole thing down and waited 30 seconds and just rebooted everything, chooses instead to come into the world and put it back together and make it what it once was, little by little. And after God, in the form of that person, in the shape of Jesus, as one of us left, God remains in the form of the Holy Spirit. God stayed with us as an advocate so that we could continue the work, so that those of us who had seen this Christ could keep doing what Christ had been doing, could keep nurturing that garden that was growing, could keep taking little snippets and planting the shoots and raising them up. And somehow, that is our job. We are Christians because we follow Christ. We are Christians because we listen to Christ and go where Christ has gone, and go where Christ is going. And we are filled with this Spirit that calls us to ever new places, to keep doing this work, to keep nurturing this reign of love until it fills the whole world. And if we are going to do that, then we have to leave this place. We can come back. We can meet here every week. We can meet here several times a week. But we also have to be out in the world, and in the past we have done that through mission trips. We've gone to Jamaica. We have gone to Joplin. We have gone where things are falling apart and done a little bit of work to put them back together. We do that by sending money to Ghana and to Haiti and to prisons, places where things are falling apart, where we hope we can help put them back together. And the reality is that another field of mission is that thing called the internet. that once was beautiful and problematic, that has fallen apart and become something else, that has been colonized by the powers of sin and death and everything that makes life less, that is broken in so many ways. But we can take the love that we gain here, the grace that we find here, the power that we gain here, and go on to that internet, go into those places, and work to make them better. We can be the good and loving voice on Facebook, or Blue Sky, or Instagram, or TikTok, or Twitter, I suppose. We can leave the caring comments. We can share the life-giving stuff. We can say, here is what is possible. And some of that may be, do you remember when this was good? Let's do that again. And some of that will be, do you know what is possible? What God brings to us, what Christ gives to us. Are you knowledgeable? Do you feel the grace that is being poured out? Do you know the love that is filling the world? It can be here too. And maybe we can find some way of merging those worlds. The physical here, the online out there, and build community across a great divide between real and digital. Maybe we can recognize how much digital is real and how much the real is digital. Maybe we can find a way to bridge this chasm to make one big world where love reigns supreme. And so I guess this message ends with an ask. Because I think a lot of what we do here is good. I think a lot of what we do here adds love to the world. I think a lot of what we do here nurtures God's reign of love. And I know a lot of what we do here gets put online. And I know that a lot of you see it pass by your feeds. Every so often, the algorithm says, you need to see this. And I know a lot of you know where to find it. And I know a lot of you know where that little like button is. And some of you even click it. There's the worship service. Click. There's the sermon. Click. There is an announcement about the garage sale. Click. And that's good. And I am grateful for that. But if you find it life-giving, I will point out that there is a button next to the like button called share. And you can click that one too. And you can say, this is my congregation where I find love, where I find life, where I am involved in the work that God is doing in the world. I'm handing it over to all of my friends. And maybe, possibly, on that rare day, for that rare moment when suddenly Facebook is back to being just post from your friends in reverse chronological order, someone will see it. And they will discover that they are loved and worthy of love and called in to love. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but little by little it is enough. And little by little, wherever we are in that digital world, if we can tell people, if we can say to people, if we can share with people the fact of the God who is love, who comes into the world in love to redeem the world in love, to bring the world to love, if we can share that with people, we just might be able to change the entire world into that garden that it once was, where there is enough and more than enough for everyone. And what a world that would be.